So in this demo, we're going to go ahead and demo the first exercise for the curvature exercise part. You'll notice there's no constraints. That means you have the freedom to build it whatever size you want, because if you constrain it correctly, it won't matter what size you make it. You could always edit the values to match whatever values I did want. So we're going to create a sketch, and we'll do this on the front view, the YZ plane. I'm going to keep it off the axis system. And I'm going to use the profile command, and I'll just go ahead and create a shape. Something, I can't remember what it looks like now. Oh, right. Something like this. Come over like this. Come over here like so. I will create an angle constraint, because CATIA doesn't like angles. If you want a particular angle, you need to constrain that angle. I'm going to guide it by creating a constraint to a point, because I know it doesn't find points very easily. I'm going to do a constraint from the point to here. Oh, and I wanted to add a hole in here. Okay. Also, if I want to get this and I want to control that height of that, if this is my datum and this is my datum, then I got to add this one in, because when I do the auto constraint, it's not going to recognize that. It's not going to recognize dimensions that don't come from the datum. It doesn't do well with the angles, and it doesn't dimension to points very well. So those are the three things you need to consider before you rip into the auto constraint. Once I have those done, though, I do an auto constraint and I let the computer do the rest of the work. What's beautiful about this is I do what I know it doesn't do well, and then when I hit auto constraint, and then coincidence this like so, the whole part's fully constrained. It's fully defined, and all I got to do is edit the dimensions to whatever I want. All I had to do, again, was help it along the way by doing the things I know it doesn't do well, which are angle constraints, dimensioning to a point, and dimensions that don't come off the datum. Okay? So you can see I've got this. It's all beautiful chain dimensions right to the end. I've got my heights and so forth. I can just move these out to make them readable. I've got a stack dimension here, stack dimension over here. What's going on here? Okay, dimension to this hole. These are all stack dimensions. Stack dimension, chain dimension, and your angle can come out. Oh, I would stack this over here on the top. Okay, so I'm going to undo this. Those are the constraints I say put in. Dimension not coming from the datum, dimension to the point, and dimension to an angle. And if you don't do that, and you just go for the auto constraint, reference these elements, stack dimension it, a lot of times I don't get, like I didn't get the angle I wanted. I got this because it's going to stack dimension to that. Okay, and when you get better at this, you'll know when the points it'll do it and when it won't do it. Okay, in this case it went ahead and got that point dimension. Now it's not a big deal if I set this and this as my anchors. It all turns green. I know I'm fully constrained. But if I didn't want this dimension, I really wanted this one instead, it's not a big deal to add that and then just delete the one that you didn't want. See? It's not the end of the world. Before I showed you auto constraints, you were going to do them all one at a time anyways. So make use of the system and its abilities to go ahead and do the auto constraint for you. Alright. Let's do this. I'm going to create the profile again. Do you see what's happening right here? If I click here and I click down here and I come over, when I go to constrain this, this coincident right here is going to lock that up. And even if I didn't want that to be locked up, that's what's going to happen. So if the part happened to come out that way, I wouldn't draw it this way. If that's what if this really was your intention, but you didn't want to lock that up, when you sketch that, make sure it's not doing the coincident. Okay? Now, I'm going to undo that. Well, let me do this. I'll highlight this and I'll do the auto constraint. See, you're not going to get a dimension. See how I did an angle here too? So you're not going to be able to control this height because it's going to try and lock into this one. And if I want this one to go 1.5 inches, let's anchor that. If I want this one to go 1.5 inches, and I didn't want that to move, I'm stuck. It's coinciding that in there. Okay? Again, a lot of people don't know how to manipulate the auto constraints. What you got to understand is those geometrical constraints is what it's going to create first. So if I came over here and I did something like this, I can kind of click off where it doesn't do that coincident. But when I go right to auto constraint, oh, you son of a gun. And I reference these elements, stack it. See, it did a weird angle thing. But a lot of times what's going to happen is it's going to find that point and it's going to try and link it to that line and set a coincidence. So you've got to remember when you're using auto constraints, the first thing it's going to do is check what you have active in Sketcher for your smart pick. And under smart pick, it's going to try and do all of these first. And again, these are all called geometrical constraints. It's going to try and put in all geometrical constraints first and then apply dimensional constraints. And again, a dimensional constraint is anything with a value, a number that you can edit. A geometrical constraint is anything with a symbol, nothing that's editable. You have alignment, parallel, perpendicular, tangent, coincident, concentricity. Those types of things are your geometrical constraints. Furthermore, if I try and create this circle, if I create this circle right here, I will auto constrain this. Stack it. If I change this to 1.5 inches, it moves the circle with it. Okay, even though I didn't have that coincident there when I created it, it's still the first thing it's going to do is look for geometrical constraints to tie in that part. So if I create that circle and I have that symbol up there, it's going to lock in that coincidence or that concentricity to that center line. Okay, and even if I create that circle, being careful not to let that, oh shoot, being careful not to click with that symbol showing up. If I click just off there, it won't show up. But again, when I auto constrain this, the first thing it's going to try and do is set up concentricity to this line. Okay, so even if I wanted the circle there to be there in the end, I really want to move this off. Create that circle where I'm not starting in the center. Okay, now another very common problem is when I click here and I go to the auto constrain, look what happened here. When I change this dimension from 2 to 1, it moved that circle to follow that line. Because what it did is it locked in a tangency right there. There's a tangent. Uh-oh. I got that tangency symbol showing up. Okay, see the tangents? So I've got tangency tangent to that line is what it's trying to do. And the reason why, when I created that circle, and I started here and I went out here, I got that blue line shooting up to that vertical line, let me know, hey, I'll lock up tangency there. So I go to the other side and say, no, I don't want tangency there. It's still going to try and lock that up, even when I kind of click off where it's not got that tangency. Again, as soon as I auto constrain, the first thing it's going to do is try and apply geometrical constraints. And that's why you see that tangency sitting there. Okay? So what I would do, so that's not the issue, create the circle so that it's not linking up to anything. It's not tangent to the edge. It's not, the center isn't going to line up there. Highlight this whole thing. Constrain your angle. Dimension not coming to the datum. And to a point. Oh shoot. There we go. And then when you go to auto constrain, the first thing it's going to do is look for geometrical constraints. It won't find any new geometrical constraints to link to because I don't have that interfering. Now I can set up these two elements and anchor them. Remove the horizontal, vertical. Oh, it looks like these are new. More new stuff. Okay. Now I'm fully constrained. And if I did want that hole over here at 2, I could edit that to 2. And now it is in the center. But I still have the freedom to move it off somewhere else if I didn't want it to be locked to that line. Alright, that is your lessons learned for the first exercise.